Can you start the session?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, good morning to all. Welcome our today's guest speaker, Mr. Abhijit Patil, sir. Sir,
Thank you.
Sir is going to address on the topic of earthquake engineering and ground motion. He has completed BE from the Shivaji University Kolhapur and MTech Structural Dynamics from IIT Roorkee. Sir has 14 years of experience in academics as well as a structural consultant and reviewer for the government and public projects pan India, like structural design of multi-story building, industrial building, special structures, etc. So, welcome, sir, and guide to our students.
Thank you very much, Jaideep sir. So, without wasting more time, we will directly start with the topic. So, I will I will share my screen. Just let me know if it is visible. For students, it can be interactive session. So, if you feel to ask something, or if you feel that it need to be any point need to be elaborated more, you can interrupt me and we can discuss that.
Yes, sir. Screen is visible.
Okay. Let me... Is this PPT visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the image shown here, we will at the almost mid or towards end of the lecture, you will be able to understand what exactly is this image. Okay, so we will basically, I have decided a flow. I have gone through your syllabus. So we will discuss seismology. That will why we need to discuss seismology. We need to discuss the exact reason or cause of earthquake and what are its effects inside the earth, and then we will see what is its effect on structures. So once we understand this, although there is no structural dynamics part in your syllabus, but quickly through one or two short videos, I will try to explain the concept of structural dynamics. And once you understand that, then the numerical part, that is how or you can say the application part of whatever we will be discussing, how the earthquake force on a building is calculated. With the help of numerical, we will discuss that. And if time permits, I will shortly cover the ductility provisions. Okay, so this will be a general flow of the lecture. So we will start with seismology. So most of you in school physics must have seen this image. Okay, so basically this is a section through interior of the earth. So you can see this. Can you see my mouse pointer moving?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So starting from the top, if you see, so this is the atmospheric layer. So we know that Earth is surrounded by atmosphere, and because of which we live. We are in this atmosphere, oxygen is present. So that is why we are able to breathe, and the living organisms are present. So beyond this atmosphere, there is void space. No air is present, right? So this is a small layer. Then you have a thin crust. Okay. So here you can see that thin. We will see the image in detail. So here you have that thin crust. Below that, there is mantle. Again, that mantle is divided in upper and lower mantle. Then you have outer core and inner core. Okay, so this is a typical interior of the earth. Now, why are we discussing this? Because we are moving towards what causes earthquake. So for that, we need to understand the structure. So this is a zoomed part with few more details. So you can see this is the crust. So the thickness of the crust is around 0 to 100 kilometer. So where it will be 0, obviously inside the oceans. Okay, so below oceans also this crust is present. And uh, near the mountains, obviously the thickness of the crust will be more. So this is your top crust. So it is just like if you see the total radius of the Earth, it is around 6,400 kilometers. Okay, so as compared to that, 100 kilometers is nothing. It is just like peel on the orange. So it is as thin as that. Then you have asthenosphere here. So crust is typically, we know it is a solid part. Okay. Then you have asthenosphere. It is a part between, it is a transition part between mantle and crust. So crust is solid, mantle is semi-solid. So partly liquid, partly solid. Basically, whatever you may have seen in movies, or if you just Google the volcanoes. So during volcanic eruption, whatever comes out, that we call as lava. So that lava is in a molten stage here. Okay, and in between this asthenosphere contains viscous magma. So if you try to understand the, you must have studied fluid mechanics, but viscous is just like fluid or viscosity. It is a property of fluid which resists the flow. So water is not viscous at all. If you just drop the water, it will just flow away wherever it gets the lower direction. Okay, but if you take an example of oil, okay, lubricating oil. So if you pour that, of course it will flow, but it will not flow as easily as water. Okay, so this is called as viscous fluid. So asthenosphere contains the molten rocks. Okay, so these crust contains rock, asthenosphere contains molten rocks, but these are not in liquid form. These are in viscous form, semi-solid you can say, or semi-liquid. And mantle contains the liquid form. Again, you have outer core and inner core. So outer core is again at a distance of 2,900 kilometer to 5,100 kilometer. So this is in liquid form, the outer core. And inside we have, so around 5,100 to 6,400. So if you calculate, the radius is around 1,300 kilometers. So this 1,300 kilometer radius, we have inner core, which is very solid, and it contains mostly iron. That is why this magnetic field of Earth is present, north, south poles, etc. Okay, so this is the internal structure of the Earth. So these are few more details, like this lithosphere. It is again another name for crust. Lithosphere and asthenosphere. Okay, so this is very rigid, cool, and brittle. So what do you mean by cool? If you compare the temperature at the core, it is around 2,400 degrees centigrade, and at this crust, that is where we live. So this temperature ranges from minus 30 degrees somewhere, or up to minus 50 degrees near the pole, to if you compare the hottest region, it's plus 50 degrees centigrade somewhere near the Sahara Desert. Okay, so it is in the range of minus 50 to plus 50 roughly. So averagely you can see the atmosphere 25 to 30 degrees average, and here 2,400 degrees centigrade. So the temperature goes on increasing as you dig deeper inside the Earth's surface. So try to understand, you have core, outer and inner core, you have mantle, lower and upper, then you have crust. So this is the typical internal structure of the Earth. So here, asthenosphere, it is in plastic stage. Yes, that's semi-solid, we call it as plastic stage. And it is comparatively weak as compared to this lithosphere, which is rigid. So this is nothing but rock. This is molten rock. This is very, very hot, again in liquid stage. This outer core is again in liquid stage, and this is solid stage. So you may wonder that at 2,400 degrees centigrade, this internal core, inner core, because we know iron will melt, because here the temperature is less as compared to this, but here it is in molten stage. Then why this stage is in solid stage? it is not only temperature, it is also pressure. So if you just try to recall the 12th physics, so pressure and temperature are related. So whatever we see by naked eyes, this is at atmospheric pressure. But if you go on increasing the pressure, obviously the what we call the temperature where one state changes to another, that is melting point. Okay, so the melting point of iron, the temperature increases because imagine huge mass of earth, it is rotating continuously, and at the center we have this inner core. So there the temperature is obviously high, but pressure is also high. That is why the iron, nickel, etc., whatever metals we have there in the inner core, those are not in molten form, those are in solid form. Okay, so yes, sorry, it is not 2500, it is 4300 degrees centigrade. Okay, so this is just to see the temperature variation. So just above the crust, it is you can say atmospheric temperature approximately 30 kilometers. So this is average. Then in the mantle, just below the crust, it is 1000 degrees centigrade. Here it is 3700 degrees centigrade, and at the inner core you have 4300 degrees centigrade. Okay, so this is a beautiful imaginary artistic view of what we have inside the Earth's crust. So whatever lava, etc., we see, that comes from this mantle part. Okay, so before we should discuss this also. So let us try to understand this phenomena, boiling water. Can anybody tell me if in this image there is a pan, room temperature water is poured, and we are giving heat from bottom? So will the temperature of water rise uniformly from bottom to top, or will it be something different story? Can somebody share his or her views?
So,
Yes.
so first the water at the lower level, that is in close contact to the pan, will get heated up. And then
Right.
slowly the water at the top of the pan.
Right. Exactly that will happen. So this makes sense that I don't know, because I don't see the participants list when I share the window. Can you tell me your name, please?
Pritesh, sir.
Ritesh or Pritesh?
Pritesh, sir. Pritesh.
Pritesh. So this proves that Pritesh makes tea for his family members. So that is why he has observed it carefully and he could answer this. Thank you, Pritesh.
Thank you,
So
sir.
exact answer. So you can see. So this is the cross section of that pan. So what is happening in this pan? The water below this, which is in contact with the source of heat. Okay, so it gets heated. The molecules get warmer, and the density of warmer molecules is less as compared to density of colder molecules. So what will happen? These warmer molecules, okay, and another thing, the temperature difference. In technical words, we call it as temperature gradient. So here, suppose the room temperature is 25 degrees centigrade. So at the top, these molecules are having temperature of 25 degrees centigrade, and here from 25, when the source of heat is given, it will start 25, 30, 35, 40. Slowly it will increase. So at roughly around for 50, 55 or 60 degrees, what will happen? There will be temperature difference. So here it is 25, here it is 60, let's say. So these warm molecules will start moving upwards. Okay, and these colder molecules these warm molecules will push these cool molecules downwards, and again they will receive heat. And what will happen to these warm molecules? These warm molecules will release the heat to the atmosphere, because there is temperature difference. Here it is 60 degrees, here it is 25. So obviously the heat will be lost in the atmosphere. Okay, but the heat is continuously being given at the bottom. So again, these cool molecules will become hotter, these warm molecules will become cooler. Again, this cycle will go on. But if you but you will see, if this goes on, then how the water will get heated, because after some time we see that bubbles are coming up, the water, its total water is heated. So this rate of loss of heat is less, very, very less as compared to the rate of gain of heat. Okay, but if you, the main point is, there is this circle. Always the molecules are moving, they are not stationary. So if you have not observed, just put a pan and observe it by yourself, because you will understand these things not just by listening, but just by doing. So this is very simple thing which you can do at your home, or if you're staying at hostel and you have access to gas, you can easily observe this. So this is the thing happening. The molecules are moving. So these moving molecules are called as convection, and these are called as convection currents. Now, why are we discussing this? Again, this is from school physics or school science. So this is the relation of what we have discussed. Okay, so same pan, just put two small wooden blocks. Okay, this also you can do, and observe what will happen because of this convection of currents. Okay, so these two currents are moving in opposite directions, anti-clockwise and clockwise. And if you put wooden blocks here, which are floating on the water, these wooden blocks will move away from each other. Agreed? Because of this, we understood why this convection of current, because there is temperature difference. Here it was 60-70 degree, here it was 25-30 degree. So water is moving in this fashion. And if I observe, put some floating objects at the top of the water surface, they will start moving. Sometimes they will move towards each other, sometimes they will move away from each other. Okay, so this phenomena is directly applicable to our Earth. So instead of pan, imagine that this is our Earth. Instead of water, what we have at the core, the temperature of, I don't remember, 4,300 degrees centigrade approximately. And here at the top where the plates are present, the temperature is 25 to 30 degrees centigrade. Okay, and this crust, if you recall, just know what we discussed, that this mantle is in molten form. So this is acting as a liquid. So water, mantle, just trying to give you the analogy, similarity. These plates are just like these wooden blocks. Okay, so this Earth's crust is not a unique, only one single piece. So if you play cricket with leather ball, so leather ball is just not a single piece. It is actually two pieces stitched together. Okay, so just like that, our Earth's crust is not a single piece. Okay, it is different parts. So these are called as plates, and they are just attached together. Okay, so because these are different parts, and below the Earth's crust, what is happening? The temperature is very high here, very low here. So the magma is continuously moving. There are different convection currents present, clockwise, anti-clockwise. Okay, and the plates above that magma, they start moving along with that convective currents. Okay, so this is happening inside the Earth's crust, so or inside the interior of the Earth. So it is not a stationary object. I will just quickly sum up before going to next point. What we discussed, the Earth's crust, Earth's interior consists of crust, then mantle, then core, outer and inner core. The Earth's crust is rock solid, rigid. It is basically rock. Then below that mantle is a molten rock stage. So it is in plastic stage or semi-liquid, semi-solid stage. Then below that you have core. And another thing we learned, that the core is obviously solid, but the temperature difference. So temperature at the core is tremendously higher than the temperature at the crust. Another thing we learned, because of this temperature difference, there is convection of currents. The magma is not a stationary, it is a moving entity. So it is continuously moving because of the temperature difference. So magma below gets heated, then warm magma goes up, the cooler, relatively cooler magma goes down, and because of this, there are continuous activity happening below the crust. And the crust is not a uniform entity. It consists of different parts. We call it as plates, and these are called as tectonic plates. And these plates are literally floating on the magma, and the magma is not stationary, it is always moving. So this is the thing, everything is moving. So what has happened because of this? So around 225 million years ago, the continents, okay, so I hope everybody understands continents. So we have continents and seas. So there are around 7 to 8 continents. Okay, so all those continents were attached together like this. Okay, so if you see slowly, this started moving. If you concentrate on this plate, so this is African plate. Okay, so each plate has a name, generally by the continent's name. So this African plate, if you see, it was below this equator and almost near to the South Pole. Then slowly it started moving towards, you can say 30 degree towards north, and this is east, so northeast. Slowly here it has touched the equator. Here it has started crossing the equator, here almost at the middle, and here you can see the present day Africa. Okay, so why this plate started moving? Because below this the magma is moving in this direction, in north, from southwest to northeast, southwest to northeast. Then if you see the Australian plate, so it was around near the South Pole. It has also started moving towards northeast, so like this. And present day you have Australia here, so from here to here. Similarly, see the South American plate. So South American plate here, it was present attached to the African plate. Then it has started moving towards west, and currently it is at this location. Now see the Indian plate. It was again attached to the South Pole and African plate. Then here it has started detaching from African plate and started moving like Australian plate. But then it has started journey from southwest to northeast, and then towards north. Okay, and here with the Eurasian plate, so this is Europe and this is Asia, so this is called as Eurasian plate. The Indian plate has attached, and here at this location the formation of Himalayas is there. Okay, so this is the thing, because of all these happenings inside the earth, the continents or the plates are continuously moving, and they are changing its position, and because of that the geology of earth is continuously changing. So with the help of a small video, of course this is not a technical video, but you will be just able to understand what exactly or how exactly the earth's plates have been moved. Of course this is a clip from a movie, so take it lightly, don't take it seriously. Is it audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So just the thing is, this squirrel is going inside the Earth's crust. So that is why this temperature, it is feeling the increase or heat in the temperature. So this is what just now we discussed. The crust, the upper mantle, this yellow part, this orange part, lower mantle, the outer core, and the rock solid inner core. So this is where all the continents were attached together. Sorry. So you can see these plates. Okay, so this cracking up started. So you can see this is African plate, this is UAE, this is actually the Indian plate attached with the Australian plate. So So this is the present day map of the world. Okay, so apart from non-technical part, just take the technical part, that how the this is obviously this is just for fun. This is not the actual reason of continental drift. Okay, so this is called as continental drift, the movement of plates. So we know the obvious or technical or real reason. This is because of the temperature difference, the moving magma, the convection of currents in the magma, and the nature of the Earth's crust, which is floating on the magma. So that is the exact reason behind this continental drift. But what is the takeaway from this? How these continents were attached together and how they got departed from each other. And this movement is still going on. Okay, so before we will just see this. Okay, so this is the present day map. So these are the plates. South American plate. So this is the African plate. This is the Indian plate, Eurasian plate. Okay, so this is Arabian plate, Australian plate. So you see the Australian plate continues from here to here. So it is only this continent is small, but actually, if you see the size of the Australian plate is very, very large. Antarctic plate, it is also very large. Okay, then you have North American plate, that is also very large. So the largest plate is North American plate. Second to that is Antarctic plate. And most of these two plates is covered with the water, sea water. Okay, now just focus on these arrows. So we had seen that this African plate was somewhere here, and it has started moving in this direction. So here now the current direction is like this. So here some part of the African plate is moving like this. Some part of the African plate is moving like this. So since it is moving in upward direction, so here also it is moving in upward direction. The Australian plate is moving in this direction. The Indian plate is moving in this direction. The Eurasian plate is exactly opposite to the Indian plate. And this is where the Himalayas were formed. After the collision of these two plates, the Himalayas were formed. And still, if you follow the news, the Everest is rising every year by a few centimeters, 3 or 4 centimeters per year, like that. So these movements are still happening. Okay. So why I'm showing this? Because we want to know the plate boundaries. So wherever these two plates meet, we call it as boundaries. So these two plates are moving towards each other. So this is called as convergent boundary. These two plates are moving away from each other. The South American plates towards west, African plate towards east. So this is called as divergent boundary. And these two plates, the Pacific plate where Pacific Sea is present and the North American plate, they are moving parallel to each other. So these are called as parallel boundaries. Okay, so once we understand this, divergent boundary, the example is this one, the South American boundary between South American plate and the African plate. So what is happening at the divergent boundaries? So the motion is spreading. That means they are moving away from each other. And the effect is constructive. So I will explain what is constructive. So when these plates move away from each other, this is a weaker section. Generally, a small ridge is present here. And the magma tries to come out of this. So most of the volcanoes you will find are present on this divergent boundaries. So you will not find that volcanic eruption is happening near Himalayas, because that is not a divergent boundary, that is a convergent boundary. The two boundaries are moving towards each other. Okay, so this is destructive. Why destructive? One plate is going down, and this, obviously because of the rise in temperature, this gets melted and it becomes part of the magma. So here a destruction is happening, here construction is happening. Why construction? The volcanoes, through volcanic eruption, the magma will come out, and when it reaches the atmospheric temperature, it cools down and it becomes a part of the plate. So here it is divergent, constructive, here it is convergent. So exactly at the boundaries there will be trench, but nearby the boundaries there will be formation of high ridges. So the Himalayas is a good example of this. Then you have transform boundaries or parallel boundaries. So here the boundaries are moving parallel to each other. Okay, and there will be movement like this. So what are these stars marked? So I will just explain that with the help of this. We will come back to this slide in few moments. So there is another theory called as elastic rebound theory. Okay, so what is happening? You see now the mass of rocks or the plates is very large. If you just see the Indian plate, whole India along with some part of Arabian Sea is a plate. Whole the Africa continent is a plate. So you can imagine how much mass is involved, and this mass is moving. So whenever there is movement, it cannot be very smooth. Okay, so at boundaries, what is happening? The magma is continuously moving below this plate. Okay, so if you see, this is a fault line. Okay, so fault line is what? It can be one example of, it can be inside the plate or it can be at the boundary of the plate. So just for our understanding, we are attaching a fence here. So what is happening? Because of movement of magma, so the convection current is in this direction, convection current is in this direction. So in two opposite directions, the current is happening. So what is happening? This major part of the plate is moving in this direction. Major part of the plate is moving in this direction. But here at the junction, there is a connection between these two plates. Okay, so if you just try to hold your hands together and push one hand in forward direction and one hand in backward direction, so suddenly it will not move. Why? Because there will be friction between your palms. Okay, and there will be built up of energy. Okay, if you continuously go on applying the force, go on increase the magnitude of the force, at one point, okay, you will feel that your hands are getting stressed. Okay, and at one point, when the force applied is more than the friction between palms, there will be sudden sleep between your palms. Okay, and the release of stress, you will feel that the stress which was induced in the arm of your hand will get released, and this stress gets released in the form of energy. Okay, because this energy, why the stress was there? Because the energy, the force which we were applying, that was getting stored in the form of stress in the rock, and when there is sudden displacement, okay, that energy gets released in the form of heat in case of our rubbing of palms. Okay, so imagine why we rub our palms in case of winter season, because it generates heat. Because of friction, it generates heat. So heat is a form of energy. Okay, so what happens in case of rocks? So here there is built-up of energy. Here there is tremendous built-up of energy, and because of that, there is sudden movement, okay, at the plate boundary, and that movement causes release of energy, and that release of energy is in the form of obviously heat and vibrations. Okay, so these rocks, so whatever these lines are shown, these are nothing but vibrations. The rocks start vibrating because of that release of energy. Okay, and these vibrations we call as earthquakes. Okay, try to understand this elastic rebound theory. So again, so once this energy gets released, it doesn't stop. Again, the movement is continuous, movement of magma. So this will again start. So this cycle will again be repeated. Okay, so this is called as elastic rebound theory. So the rupture of rocks or the vibrations of rocks, everything is because of this release of energy. So this is the exact cause of earthquake. Okay, so let me just show you one small video. Are you able to see this screen? The video screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I will just start. So it is a small 10-second clip. So whatever, this is one plate and this is another plate. So for reference, these lines are drawn. So just observe what exactly is happening. So movement in this direction, movement in this direction, stress concentration here. And when this goes off, so at this location, let me just pause this. So at this location, can see there is deformation of rocks here occurring, but the whole mass has moved forward, and this, because of this attachment, friction between these two plates, the whole mass is under tremendous stress. Okay, so this red color indicates the stress level, and at one point, the stress is more than the friction between these two plates, and at that point, the energy gets released, but there is sudden slip. We call it as slip. Slip is what? Nothing but your displacement of the rock. Okay, and after that displacement, now these two were attached, and now these are separated. So at that instant, you can imagine the South American plate and African plate. Okay, so they are under tremendous stress, and at one point that stress gets more than the friction between those two plates, and there is sudden slippage between these two plates. And imagine these two heavy masses involved in this phenomena, and there the energy gets released, and the amount of energy is tremendous. Okay, and that energy gets transformed into vibrations of the ground, and that we call as earthquake. Okay, so this is the cause of the exact cause of the earthquake. So we will move further. Okay, so we'll see the effects of the earthquake. Now we know the exact cause of the earthquake. Because of the plate tectonics and elastic rebound theory, in short, the earthquakes are generated. So when the earthquakes are generated, so what exactly is happening? So I had told you to come back to this. Okay, so these are the stars where this slippage is occurring and the release of energy is occurring. Okay, so this star is nothing but location of the earthquakes. So usually this process continues, and here the earthquakes will happen. So the Nepal earthquake, which was around in 2015, I guess. So that Nepal earthquake is nothing but example of this type of boundary and energy release. I will share the video. Of course, this is not a part of syllabus or scope of this lecture, but just out of curiosity, you can see that video to understand the more details and more analysis of that Nepal earthquake. Okay, now you have understood the terms, the plates or plate tectonics, elastic rebound theory. Now you will be able to understand that video. Okay, so I will share that later on. So just if you are curious enough, you can go through that video. And this is, so you can see the stars are not there here at the divergent boundary. So this means that earthquakes will happen at convergent boundaries and transform boundaries, and very less earthquake will happen near the divergent boundary. Okay, and this is not theory, this has been proved. So this image, which is again a map of world with plate boundaries marked, and the yellow and red dots are nothing but seismic activities. Okay, so the orange dots indicate higher magnitude. Now this term magnitude I will explain. So magnitude is nothing but it indicates the amount of energy released during the earthquake. Okay, so this is nothing but magnitude. So if you say 2 magnitude or 3 magnitude, so 2 magnitude earthquake, or sorry, the energy amount of energy released in magnitude 3, it's 10 times more than amount of energy released in magnitude 2, because that is a logarithmic scale. Okay, so coming to the point, so you can see we had seen that this is South American plate, and this is African plate, divergent boundary. So you can see very few seismic activity, and that too of low magnitude. The yellow indicates low. Okay, comparatively, if you come here, so this is Australian plate and this is Eurasian plate. Okay, so this is parallel boundary, transform boundary. So here you can see even here in the Japan. So this is Pacific plate, and this is Eurasian plate. So here also this is parallel boundary. So most of the earthquake activities, orange or red dots and yellow dots also present, but more number of yellow dots are present as compared to this. So seismic activities are happening on this boundary. So the tsunamis in 2007 were because of the earthquake happened near Java and Sumatra. So that location is somewhere here. Okay, so here also Nepal earthquake, the yellow dots are more, but no large seismic activities are happening as compared to this. So parallel boundary, if you try to arrange in descending order, parallel boundaries are more prone to earthquakes. Then below that will be convergent, and below that will be divergent. Okay, so this is practical data. So from this, we can prove this theory. This is what exactly is happening. Okay, now going ahead, if you have any doubts up to this point, Because of time limitation, I'm going too fast, but if you have any doubt, we can discuss that or we can move further. Okay, shall we move further?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will be looking after the effects of earthquake, because as an engineer, as a civil engineer or as a structural engineer, these effects are more concerning to us than the causes. Of course, we must know the causes, then only we will understand the effect. Okay, so when as we have seen, the earthquake is nothing but a release of energy because of the movement of the plates. So this energy is getting released in the form of waves, vibrations or waves, and these are called as seismic waves. So seismic is related to earthquake. It comes from Latin word. Okay, so seismo means earth. Okay, so seismic waves mean the waves which are traveling inside the body of the earth and as well as the surface of the earth. So earth waves, you can call it. So there are two types of seismic waves after earthquake. So one type is body wave and another is surface wave. So body wave, obviously the waves which travel inside the earth's body are called as body waves, and the waves which travel on the surface of the earth are called as surface waves. Okay, so body waves are again of two types: P, that is primary wave, and S, that is secondary wave. So we'll just go through these small animations to understand what exactly is happening. Okay, so this is just the body of the earth. Okay, small, just like in fluid mechanics, we consider a channel in the river to understand the properties of that whole channel. So we have taken a small mass of the earth inside the earth's body, and we have divided that into cubes or squares like this, and we are trying to observe what exactly is happening in case of P waves. So you just see the P wave started from here. Okay, and we will just observe this sample. So this black part is sample. So this will first compress and then get, this is the rarefaction, it is called, opposite to compression, rarefaction. Compress and rarefaction. Okay, similarly, what is the thing happening? This is moving forward, backward, and original position. Okay, so this is the particle motion, forward, backward, and coming back to original position. Okay, so waves will pass. Remember, the body mass is not moving. The body mass is present there itself, but it will vibrate. So what is vibration? Movement of any particle or body with respect to its mean position. So it will move forward, backward, and come back to its mean position. Okay. Forward, backward, mean position. Parallelly, it is getting compressed, it is getting rarefacted, and again regaining its original size. Okay, so this is what is happening. So the particle motion is in the direction of the wave. So wave is moving in this direction. So particle is also moving in this direction, backward and forward. So this is P wave. Secondly, S wave. So you will be easily able to understand the particle is moving in a direction perpendicular to the wave direction, moving upward, downward, and coming back to its mean position. So this is called as secondary wave. Okay. Then you have surface waves. So in that, again, there are two parts. Left hand side, it is Rayleigh wave. So these are named against scientist Rayleigh, and this is named against the scientist Love. So these are two waves. Okay, so this is the, let me see, yes, yeah, I have animation. So Rayleigh wave is just like a circular motion. Okay, so the particle moves in a circular fashion and again come back to its original position. So this is the particle motion in a circular way, like this. So these are traveling along the surface of the earth. and the love wave is like this. So the particle motion in a direction perpendicular, because this is on surface. So what is the difference between S wave? So S wave was moving up and down, and this is moving side by side because it is on the surface of the earth. So it is just like the motion of the snake. Okay, or if you tie one end of a rope and hold the other end in your hand, and if you just give a horizontal flick, so the rope will show this kind of motion. So rope is steady, rope is not moving. Only the particles or part of the wave, a part of the rope is moving left, right, and again coming back to its original position. Okay, so these are the effects of earthquake. So this is how the waves travel. Suppose the earthquake has happened here. Okay, so the body waves will travel inside the body of the Earth's surface. So the P waves will travel like this, like this, like this. Okay, they will also change the media. So just like refraction, so it will be having refraction like that. That means the angle will be changed, and when the media again changes, again the angle. When these waves reach the surface of the earth, so they will travel in the form of surface waves. Okay, so you can see the P waves will reach at any point on the earth. So if you see, this is the earthquake and it is exactly opposite of the point, opposite of the location of the earthquake. So there also P waves will also reach, but S waves will reach up to some point. So body waves, because they travel through the body, so they will reach. P waves will reach. So anywhere earthquake has happened, the P waves will be received by all the parts of the earthquake. So earthquake happens at US, the P waves will be felt at the. Of course, these waves are not felt by human beings, so we have to have some instruments to record those waves. Okay, so the instrument will record that wave, but S waves will be recorded up to some part of the earth, and the surface waves also after some point. So just like if there is a steel lake, okay, no wind is there, it is still, and if you drop a stone inside that, so the surface waves will travel along the surface, and after some time the amplitude. What is amplitude? Amplitude is the amount by which the deformation is happening. So the amplitude will be more where you drop the stone, and it will be less as you go away from the stone. So that is happening with the surface waves. Okay, so these are the effects of earthquake. So once we know these effects, we have to understand what exactly will be happening to our structures. So you see the P waves. So we are considering two types of structures: a small building and a long span bridge. Okay, so the small waves, the P waves, we know they are moving like this: compression, rarefaction. So it will not have a very extensive damaging effect on the structures. Whereas S waves, though it is a body wave, okay, some part will move up, some part will move down. So it will not affect building like structures, but it will affect long span structures like bridge. Okay, because this part is moving in this direction, this part is moving in this direction. So obviously the middle part will be under damage. So there will be, this is dangerous for or this is affecting long span structures. And the surface waves obviously are affecting our buildings as well as long span structures. So if you see again in descending order, surface waves are more damage causing waves to structures. Moderately damage causing waves are S waves, and very low or literally no damage to because of the P waves. Okay, so this is what is happening due to seismic waves. So we are more concerned about these effects. Now, shortly, how the as I said, how these earthquakes are measured. So we need amplitude for that, and then that amplitude is converted to some scale that is called as Richter magnitude scale. So whenever you read in newspaper that this much magnitude, just a second. Okay, sorry for the disturbance. We'll continue. Okay, so we're discussing this. So the magnitude, the earthquakes are measured in terms of magnitude. Okay, that is called a Richter magnitude, and for that we need this amplitude. Okay, so this is a simple mechanism which works on the principle of Newton's second law. Okay, so what is second law? The force F equal to ma basically. So force is proportional to mass and acceleration. So what is done? This weight is very heavy weight is used. So this is conceptual. This is not actual instrument. This is conceptual. Heavy weight is used. Okay, and you have the other assembly, the rotating drum, where it is a recorder. A pen is attached here, and a frame. And this frame is attached to the ground. So when earthquake comes, this weight is heavy. It is attached with a string or spring. Okay, so this whole assembly will vibrate with respect to ground during earthquake. But this heavy weight, because of its heavy, because this will require heavy mass, heavy force, F equal to ma. So since the mass is more, you will require more force to accelerate this mass. So literally there will be no vibration, and this whole other assembly will vibrate, and you will record this on a recorder. So this is basic principle of a seismograph. So let me check if I have video. Yes, a small video will explain this concept.
How a seismograph works. A seismograph is an instrument used to measure the movement of earthquakes. A weight is suspended in a way that allows it to remain still when the ground moves. Most modern instruments use an electromagnetic mechanism for this. A writing instrument is attached to the weight, allowing it to record the movement as it happens. The word graph refers to the writing action. Most modern earthquake monitoring uses seismometers, not seismographs.
Okay, so this is again conceptual this thing. So this paper is actually mounted on a rotating drum. Okay, you have a pen attached here. So whenever earthquake comes, this whole assembly is having less mass, so it moves with the ground. So this base is attached to the ground, and this is very heavy mass attached. So it is basically isolated from this frame, attached with a very small string, so that this frame moves, but this mass doesn't move, and we get the record.
And record the movement of the earth.
So this is just concept, but actually nowadays this electromagnetic seismometers are used, and this
digitally, or output the data to a seismogram, a printed version of the wavelengths on a large drum. These wavelengths that represent Earth's movements are so small that in order for scientists to study them, they have to be amplified.
Okay, so this is how actual record. So this is a printer, and this is monitor where you get the record. So no need to store everything. Earlier days, we used to store the record papers like this, but nowadays everything is stored, recorded and stored digitally, and whatever data required, that data we can extract. So this data is available free of cost. So usgs.gov.in is the website where you can get a record of any earthquake which has been happening in the on the earth. Okay, so usgs.gov.in is the website. So for research purpose, if you opt for MTech or PhD, so there you will require this data, and there you can get that earthquake records. So this is just for measuring the vertical motion. So only the assembly is somewhat changed. So there you can measure the vertical motion like this. Okay, so this is all about seismology, the effects of cause of earthquake, effects of earthquake, the waves, and how the earthquakes are recorded in very short. Okay, in continuation with this, if you have any doubts, you can ask. It's just a small. Okay, so we are talking about India. So India is basically divided into 4 seismic zones. Okay, so what is a seismic zone? I will just go to the map. So this is very old map, 1962 map. So it was basically 0 to 6. So 7 zones were there. So what is this? The lower the zone, the lower the probability of earthquake happening inside the into that zone. So if you see, this is 0 zone. Okay, this is old map, 1962 map. So that means the probability of happening of earthquake will be very less, and that too will also be very less. And if you go to this red zone, so if you see, this is northeast region. So that means here the if you remember, this is Nepal region. So this is all Himalayan range. So here you will see the higher zones are present. Here also there is some higher zone. So the 2002 Bhuj earthquake is from this location. Okay, so here the probability of earthquake happening is more, and the magnitude of those earthquake will also be higher. So this seismic zoning map, earlier it was like this. Then the zones were revised in 1966, then 70. So why this revision was happening? Because earlier there were no records. So as the number of seismographs or seismometers were installed, we got more records and we modified the graphs. So in 2002, it was revised after the Bhuj earthquake. So if you see, there was zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and now 1 is merged into 2. So we have zone 2, 3, 4, 5. So no zone 1 is present. And again in 2016, after the Nepal earthquake, the graph is revised. It is like this. So basically, if you see, the zone maps are not revised. Almost same map is present. So if you see this, okay, I just wanted to focus here. So in 1970, so there is no separate zone seen here, but in 2002, you will see, so just near Bombay, this location. So this is near Satara, where the Koyna Dam is present. So there is a phenomena called reservoir-induced seismical activities. So because of that large dam, a lot of seismic activities are happening here, and because of that, this zone you will see, and this is same has been continued in 2016. Otherwise, whole of the Maharashtra is in zone 3 or 2. Only this thing is in zone 4. Okay, so why I'm showing this? So this is available in IS 1893, the IS code, from where we will be referring to calculate the earthquake force. Okay, so this is not required. So this is the seismic zoning of India. So we will make use of this map when we are solving the numerical. So moving further, So although theory of vibrations is not a part of your syllabus, but I will just explain shortly the concept in 10-15 minutes.
I want to illustrate.
So this is these videos are available on YouTube, so you can also see this. So basically, what to see from this video, the mass and spring model. So I will explain the analogy of this or application of this in building later on. Okay, but try to understand this mass and spring, what exactly is happening, the time period below this board. He will discuss the time period also. So this is very good demo to understand the dynamics, structural dynamics. So basics of structural dynamics. So I will just not show you full video. We'll just
Of excursion from with an amplitude of 1 centimeter. I'm going to want to move this.
Okay, so this is a spring and this is a mass, and there is a small scale attached here. So how the vibrations, oscillations mean vibrations. So how these vibrations are happening, and what is the relation of this vibration with the time period? Okay, so we will understand what is time period. So time period is nothing but when a body moves in a, just like what we had seen in P waves or S waves, the particles move in one particular direction repeatedly. Okay, so when this repetition is there, we call it as vibration or oscillation. So there is a particular time period for that vibration. So to complete one cycle, that means the particle is at stationary position. So just like this mass, so this mass will move below, then above, and again come back to its mean position. So that one cycle, time required to complete that one cycle is called as time period. So we'll just understand that concept here.
Mass 1 centimeter up and release it. And so now it's oscillating roughly between 18 centimeters and 20. I could have done the same thing by moving it down to 20 centimeters. And then the overall motion is still 2 centimeters from top to bottom, but only 1 centimeter between the equilibrium position and one of the maximum positions. So now we want to look at the dependence of the period on the mass and the spring constant, and also the amplitude. First the amplitude, spring constant, positions. So now we want to look at the dependence of the period on the mass.
Okay, so you see this T is nothing but time period, 2 pi under root m by k. So this is the way we calculate the time period of any system. So let it be a mechanical system like this mass and spring, or let it be a building. Okay, so this is universal formula, or let it be a pendulum. So this formula is being explained with the help of a demo here with the mass and spring. So just now what he did, he displaced this with 1 centimeter, and we had seen the time period roughly. Then he will now increase the displacement and see what is happening with the time period.
And the spring constant, and also the amplitude. First the amplitude. And in order to just get a rough idea about how the period depends on amplitude, and let me look at a couple of different amplitudes. Here's a fairly small amplitude. Boom, 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 boom. Here's a medium amplitude. Boom, 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 boom. And here's a large one. Boom, 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 boom. And back to the small one again, and we're just getting a rough measurement here. Boom, boom, boom. I think you can tell that the amplitude, or that the period doesn't seem to be depending much, if at all, on the amplitude. And in fact, the mathematics bears this out. The period T has no dependence on the amplitude of the motion. But
okay, So that is the thing. The amplitude of the motion, that means how you start the vibration. The time period will not depend on that. Okay, so if you start with 1 centimeter, same time period required to complete one cycle. If you start with larger, like 10 centimeter amplitude, again the time period required will be same.
Does depend on the mass. So let's look at.
Okay, so in this formula you have mass included. So he will now replace this mass with higher mass, and we will see what happens.
At the period as a function of the mass by adding a bigger mass. You remember how fast the last one was going. First thing to notice is that our equilibrium position is no longer at 19 centimeters. It's down at around 36 centimeters. And then if I give it some motion and look at the period is now boom, 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 boom. It's slower, takes longer. So that means the period is the time between a time for one complete oscillation. So that's from here back down to here again. That time is now longer with a bigger mass. Exactly as predicted by the equation. If you increase the mass, it's in the numerator here, that will increase the period or the time for one complete oscillation. And then bringing this to the extreme, even longer period, equilibrium position much lower, boom, 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 boom. Very, very long period motion. So how does this depend on the spring constant K? Get the dependence on the mass down. The period depends on 1 over the square root of the spring constant. If I use 2 springs instead of 1, I thereby doubled the spring constant. So let's compare the period with just one spring and this large mass. Boom, 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 boom. And the same mass with 2 springs. You know first that the equilibrium position is higher because we got more force pulling it up to counteract gravity. Boom, boom, boom. A little bit faster. Faster.
Okay, so the takeaway from this video, the time period, if you see, as he was increasing the mass, the time period was increasing. And as he increased the stiffness, which is represented by these springs. So instead of 1 spring, when he attached 2 springs, that means the stiffness is increased, the time period decreased. So this is the mathematical equation, and this is how practically we can see the actual things happening. Okay, now we will see another video to understand what is the relation of this video or this time period, mass and spring with our structure.
To understand the resonance of buildings during earthquakes, we will look at other resonance systems. The natural frequency of a swing makes it easy to maintain the motion using little energy. A prolonged wind swung the bridge on the right at its natural frequency until it exceeded its structural integrity and tore apart. The frequency of a wave refers to the number of waves that pass through a point in 1 second. A period is the amount of time that it takes one wave cycle to pass the given point. A frequency of 1 cycle per second has a 1 second period. If the frequency doubles to 2 cycles per second, the period is only half of a second. Resonance is a tendency of a system to oscillate with greater amplitude at some frequencies than at others. The resonant frequency of any given system is the frequency at which the maximum amplitude oscillation occurs. For example, the resonant frequency of the 1 meter long pendulum is 1/2 of a hertz. If the string were 1/4 the length, it would vibrate at twice the frequency. Small amplitudes can be approximated by this equation using length and the gravity constant. Resonance systems can be used to generate vibrations of a specific frequency to create music. Strings under tension, such as with this cello, have resonant frequencies directly related to the material of the string, as well as the mass, length, and tension of the string. The mass of the slow C string resonates at 264 Hz, whereas the thinner A string of a different material resonates at 440 Hz. Now, we use a simplified analogy of boats at sea. A series of waves, particularly when they hit broadside, can initiate rolling behavior. The smaller boat is affected by short-period low-amplitude waves that slap against the ocean liner with no effect. Small boats, on the other hand, will ride up and over long-period high-amplitude waves as the larger boats begin a long, slow rock. Now, let's look at how buildings are affected by earthquake-induced seismic waves. All buildings have a natural period, or resonance, which is a number of seconds it takes for the building to naturally vibrate back and forth. The ground also has a specific resonant frequency. Hard bedrock has higher frequencies than softer sediments. If the period of ground motion matches the natural resonance of a building, it will undergo the largest oscillations possible and suffer the greatest damage. Small buildings of 1 or 2 stories resonate naturally at much less than 1 second periods. A 1 second period will affect buildings of about 10 stories. For example, a 30-story building resonates at a period of 3 seconds, and a 50-story building resonates at a period of 5 seconds. During the 1985 Mexico City earthquake, the ground beneath the city resonated with a 2-second period for over a minute. Thus, medium-height buildings with similar natural periods suffered the most damage, while short, old, weak stone buildings and skyscrapers were relatively undamaged. That proved to be what is called a resonance disaster, which is how engineers describe the destruction of a building by seismic vibrations at a system's resonant frequency. It is because of prolonged energy input that the system swings more and more strongly until a structural load limit is exceeded. A key point here is that small buildings on hard rock and large buildings on soft sediments may suffer more damage and ground motion effects from an earthquake than small buildings on soft sediments and large buildings on hard rock. Resonance is one factor that contributes to earthquake damage. Of equal or greater importance are building design and the quality of construction materials. By determining the resonant frequency of the ground beneath the building site, the building design can be modified so that a resonance disaster does not occur. The following demonstration shows.
Okay, here we have seen that buildings vibrate and they have their own time period, because the time period depends on mass and stiffness. So stiffness is here. I will, after this video, I will just shortly explain how the stiffnesses are derived. So particular building has a particular time period, and when the earthquake waves pass, if that matches with the time period of the building, the chances of damage are more. So the small building, medium building, and large buildings. So if this time period generally in soft soil is longer, and the time period on the bedrock or hard rock is shorter. So what is suggested here is this time period of small building is smaller, so this can be rested on soft soil, and the tall buildings can be rested on bedrock. But so this is a theoretical suggestion, but practically you live nearby Mumbai, so if you have visited the South Mumbai, and we already know that the Mumbai, it was actually 7, I guess I'm not wrong, 7 islands, and then they were connected together by pouring soil. So basically all the tall structures in India, most of the tall structures in India are in Mumbai, and it is resting on soft soil. So how that is happening? So if you see that it is not resting directly on soft soil, they drive piles, okay, until the hard strata is available, and on that hard strata these buildings are rested. So that is why these buildings can survive the earthquakes. Okay, so these technological solutions need to be done by civil engineers or structural engineers. Okay, so generally this is happening. So even if you see the Bhuj earthquake, so this basin effect which was shown here, so same thing, that example was for Mexico, but same thing was happened in case of Bhuj earthquake. So the earthquake location, which is called as focus, so that was nearby, or epicenter, that was nearby the Bhuj. Okay, but Ahmedabad, I don't remember, I think 200 plus kilometers away from the, so the damages near Bhuj were less, but the damages in damages to buildings in Ahmedabad was devastating. Okay, two reasons. One, nearby Bhuj there were small buildings, and in the hard, it was not on very soft soil. Okay, it was a medium soil. But the Ahmedabad is located in the basin of river, and it is basically soft soil, and there were buildings of 5 to 7 storied located, and that the time period of vibrations was more in the Ahmedabad, and that matched with the medium height buildings, and because of that the damages were amplified in Ahmedabad. Okay, so that is the takeaway from this video. Another demo, just like this, this is we have seen in animation. So one professor, that video is also very famous and it is available on YouTube. So that will be followed. So modeling building resonance by Dr. Robert Butler.
How to model resonance in the classroom.
The idea of the BOSS model is that different height buildings will respond to different frequencies of horizontal ground motion. A tall building.
Okay, so before we proceed, so this is represented representing the mass of the building. Okay, and this string is representing the stiffness of the building. So stiffness is resistance to force, and that is nothing but our columns. Okay, so every building is resting on columns. So those columns can be modeled as a single line representing the same stiffness. Okay, so this is a tall building representing more stiffness and more mass. This is a short, medium height building, and this is a short building. Now what he will do, he will just try to vibrate this with different frequencies and see which building will respond more.
Building will respond to very slow or low frequency oscillations of the ground. So if I move the base slowly back and forth, I can get the tall building to oscillate, where the intermediate and short buildings are not moving. If I move it more briskly, I can dial in the rate of horizontal oscillation so that I move the center building, the intermediate height building, and the short and the tall ones are barely moving. To get the short building to oscillate, you need to move the base very briskly back and forth and dial in to the natural frequency of the short building, and we can see that the intermediate and tall buildings are barely moving.
Okay, so these videos are available if you are more interested on this website, IRIS. So this is one institute which keeps on researching on earthquakes. So a lot of videos are available there. So you can go through that if you are curious. Okay, so this is what we have seen, that the buildings are having their own time period. Okay, and depending upon the time period of the building will respond to earthquake. So basically, as I was mentioning, we just try to get so any tall building or single storied also, any building can be represented. Sorry, I will change the color of the pen. With the help of a model like this. So this is a portal frame, let's say. These two vertical lines are columns. And this is nothing but floor level. So this represents the mass of slabs and beams, okay, as well as walls. So whatever load of wall is there, that is included here, and 50% of column weight is also considered to be acting at this floor level. Okay, so we are assuming that there are some whatever mass is there, that is concentrated at this slab level. Okay, these two indicate columns with stiffnesses K1 and K2. So what is stiffness? It is resistance to force. So if you just go by this equation, force is equal to stiffness into deformation, right? So mathematically, if you see, I think I am telling you something wrong. Just let me. Okay, so the unit of the force is Newton. The unit of the displacement is meter. And the unit of this is, yes, I was right, Newton per meter. So actually, the stiffness is defined as force required to displace any structure, in this case, the portal frame, by a unit displacement. Oh, sorry, okay. So force required to displace any structure by 1 unit. So if it is in Newton per meter, so suppose 1 Newton per meter is the stiffness, that means this structure is required to apply 1 Newton force to displace this by 1 meter, like that. Okay, so this is the basic idea of stiffness. And this stiffness is, suppose a cantilever column is there, okay, for lateral deflection. So if you remember, this is calculated, the deformation here will be like this. So this delta is calculated as if this is the force P, PEI, E is the modulus of elasticity, I is the moment of inertia, 12 L cube, L is the length of the cantilever. So if you remember this from structural mechanics, the displacement of a cantilever beam or column, whatever you say, of length L, modulus of elasticity E, which will depend on the material, and this I will depend on the cross section, whether it is circular, rectangular, orientation, etc. So PEI by 12 L cube. And if I just want the stiffness of this column, so what I will here, F is equal to P in this case, divided by PEI upon 12 L cube. So if we just simplify this, it will become 12 EI by L cube. So this is the stiffness of a typical column. Okay, so how to calculate stiffness? Simply you can refer to any structural analysis book. So there you will find these standard deformation formulas, or directly stiffness is also given. But how is that calculated? So this is how it is calculated. Force required per unit displacement is nothing but stiffness. Okay, so to coming back to this, our buildings you can represent as like this. Suppose this is multi-story, 2-storied. You can assume it like this. So this is 1 story M1. This is another story M2. So this is K1, K2. Again here it is K3, K4, like that. Okay, so if 10-storied, again the 10 this thing will increase like that. So we'll focus on single-story building. Okay, this can be represented with the help of a model called as spring model, spring and dashpot model. So I will just explain what is this spring and dashpot. So this is representing K. So this is the combined stiffness of these columns. What is C? I will explain. What is M? I will explain. What are these rollers? So these rollers indicate that. So this is a mechanical model. If you see spring, so whatever we had seen in that demo video, in that only this dashboard, this is called as dashboard. This is added. Okay. And this is vibrating in this direction. So X, let us say, time dependent. So if I just pull this mass and leave, it will start vibrating like this, like this. Okay, so this model and this model are same. So here mass is what? Mass of M is what? Mass of slab, beams, etc. K1, K2, these are stiffness. From the stiffness will be offered by columns. Okay, then what is C? What is C? So this C is nothing but resistance. Okay, so if you see, this is concrete. So whenever this is moving in this direction, what will happen? The concrete, we know it is not homogeneous material. It is made up of aggregates, coarse aggregates, fine aggregates, cements. So there will be internal friction between these materials, and these materials internal friction is represented by this C. Okay, so this is the spring mass dashpot model. This can also be represented like this. So if I ignore this, this is negligible generally, so we can ignore this for time being. So this can be represented like this. So this is mass, this is stiffness, and whatever second video or in the last of the video, whatever we have seen is this model. Okay, so that vertical string is nothing but this stiffness of the columns, and this mass attached above is the mass of the structure. Okay, so this is how this is represented, and the equation of motion from Newton's second law is like this: mx double dot plus kx equal to 0. So k is here stiffness, x is the displacement, x double dot is nothing but acceleration, rate of change of velocity. Okay, so it is just for information. It is not included in the syllabus, but this is how our building is related to that mass and stiffness model. Okay, so just try to remember this. Okay. So I hope something is clear related to dynamics. So this is just a start of dynamic, or a very basic thing of dynamics. So from this mass and stiffness, we can calculate the time period of the building. 2 pi square root of m by k. This is time period, and this is called as equation of motion. Okay, so from this equation of motion, actually we get, I will not go into that derivation. So from this equation of motion, we get this time period expression. Okay, so coming back to so whatever I had decided that you must know before solving a problem, that has been covered. So what shall we do? Shall we start with the numerical, or shall we take break and we can again meet tomorrow? Jaideep sir, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, student, what will do? Can we continue for 1 hour, or we can wait tomorrow?
Sir, continue.
Okay.
Okay. So we will continue. We'll continue for some period. I will just explain the basics of or I will just explain the numerical and actual solution. We will start tomorrow because it will be obviously hectic to digest so many new things. Okay. Pawan, is Pawan there? He had some doubt in chat box.
Yes, sir.
Pawan, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm there. Yes, sir.
Yes, is your doubt clear, or you were saying something about formula?
So you have written the formula for K, that 12 EI by L cube.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Just a second. Yes, it's wrongly written. It should be 12 EI by L cube, and the K formula will become, I will just correct this.
Okay.
Thanks, Kumar. And this is not D, this is delta. It looks like D. Yes, so it is 12 EI by L cube. Right, just a minute. A should be actually 12 EI by L cube. So here it is actually P L cube by 12 EI. I hope I'm correct this time. So this is P L cube by 12 EI, and if you simplify, it will become the stiffness of the column, and this numerical, this cantilever column will become 12 EI by L cube. Okay, so if you have written, kindly make this correction. Okay, so what we will do, we will just you will just write down this numerical. Okay, I hope it is visible.
Okay, I'll have to write down this question.
Okay, I will just dictate slowly. Parallelly, you can write. Because whatever we have learned, now it is time to apply this. Because what is our ultimate aim? We had to estimate the force coming on the structure. That is what is ultimate aim of this unit. Okay, so this background was for that. Again, in addition to this, we will refer IS 1893. I have shared that soft copy with Chowgule sir and requested him to share the same with you. It is, I will also share the link, because if you require any other IS codes, those are available on that link free of cost. Only thing is you have to register there. Okay, so we will, with the help of this example and with the help of IS 1893 guidelines, we will try to see how earthquake forces are calculated coming on a structure. Okay, so this is a typical example. You can write this example. I will just dictate slowly. A 4-storied building. 4-storied building is to be constructed at Pune on medium soil. At Pune on medium soil. Determine the lateral forces developed due to earthquake. That needs to be mentioned. Due to earthquake at various story levels of the building. At various story levels of the building. Also draw story shear diagram. Also draw story shear diagram. Assume following data. So 1 to 9, few points are given. So number of bays in X direction, 4. Number of bays in Y direction, 3. Width of each bay, 3.5 meter. Thickness of slab, 125 mm. Then story height 3 meter. Size of columns 300 by 400 mm. Size of beams 300 by 300 mm. Then thickness of infill walls 230 mm. Infill means partition walls. Live load on floors 3 kilonewton per square meter. And SMRF frame. What is SMRF? That we will see when we are solving the problem. Assume any additional data if required. So number of stories is not mentioned here, but a figure is given. So sometimes number of stories will be mentioned. Sometimes with the help of figure, you will get the input data. So in plan, this building looks like this. In X direction, 4 bays, 1, 2, 3, 4. In Y direction, 3 bays, 1, 2, 3. Width of each bay is 3.5 meter. So total length is 14 meter. Total here length is 10.5 meter. So center of at center of each junction, we have our columns placed. And this is sectional elevation. So don't just write the hatch part, just show the number of bays, because this is in X direction. So total 14 meter, and number of stories 1, 2, 3, 4. So total height is 12 meter. 3 meter height of each floor. Okay, meanwhile, you can put your questions in the chat box, or you can convey your questions later on if you find something that you have not understood. You can convey your questions to Chowgule sir. We will address it tomorrow. Shall we stop, Chowgule sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We
so
will stop
tomorrow,
here.
a few instructions for students that 1893, which sir will share with you, be ready with that. Okay, hard copy or soft copy in whatever form you have. And another thing, Calci. Okay, so we will require a calculator also, so that we can you do it hands-on. Okay, then only you will be able to understand what exact steps are to be followed if you do it on your own. Okay, so we will be discussing step by step, and there will be few more concepts that also we will discuss whenever that concept comes when we are solving the numerical. Okay, so we will stop now. Students can leave the class.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for your sharing your vast knowledge of earthquake engineering with our student. Tomorrow also we'll continue this topic. Okay, at 10:30, sir.
Okay, same time, today's time, 10:30 we will start.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Student, mention your roll number in chat box, and then you can leave.
So I am leaving the meeting.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All of you mention your roll number in chat box. Tomorrow we'll continue the same session at 10:30 a.m. Okay. So before 10:30, I will share the link and go through that IS code, IS 1893. Okay, those who have mentioned your attendance, they can go, means they can leave. Aniket Smith Patil, you can leave. You mention your roll number in chat box.